Okay, for this tutorial, we're going to learn how to use the alignment tool and to also add a title and text to our layout. So first off, we're going to talk about the alignment tool. And if you have your move tool selected up here in this toolbar, you'll see these little boxes. And that's what you use to align things. So this will say align left, align center, horizontally, align right edges. And this one distributes everything. So the gaps in between your selected items are equal. And then this one here is your align your top edges, align center vertically, align bottom edges. And then this one does your equal gaps distribute. So to show you how that works, first off, we're going to add 3 buttons here to this layout. So I'm going to go into my kit. I'm going to select a button and I'm going to select this little circle here. And then I'm going to select one of these flares. And that's what I'm going to show you how to distribute and align. And I didn't have my top layer selected, so they all added below. So I'm going to go ahead and drag those all up to the top over here in my layers selection by selecting all of them and then dragging them up. Okay. So just to demonstrate how these options work, I'm just going to separate everything and say I want to align these so that they're all horizontally aligned. Right now they're 3 different sizes. So if I selected to align the top edges, then it's going to align it that way. If I select to align it the center vertically, then it aligns everything along the center line. And then if I were to click on this distribute, then it makes the space in between each of these equal. I'm going to resize mine so that they're all in similar sizes, just because that is how I would prefer for it to look. And then make sure you hit the enter. Grab this one, move it over. So I'm going to select all 3 of them, and you can do that over in your layers by selecting, holding your control down and selecting the 3 layers that those items are on. Otherwise, you can select on the layer, hold your shift key down, and select them just with your mouse. So once I have all 3 of those selected, because they still are not exactly the same size, I'm going to center them vertically so that it just aligns their centers. Then I'm also going to select on the equal gaps or distribute here so that the spacing is the same. Then I'm going to put these down here on my strip of paper, and since they're all selected together, I'm going to hold my shift key down and just size them down a little bit more. Now that you have those ready, then you're ready to add your shadows to those. So the shadow that I'm choosing to use is this 5th shadow that's for buttons. I'm going to click on each of those and add the shadow to those. Okay, so that's how you would do it on some elements. Now I'm going to pick up an alphabet and do a title on this layout. So I'm going to go into where my kit is again. I've got a folder. I just did this ahead of time, so it has the letters that I'm wanting to use. I'm going to select all of those by holding my control button down and selecting the letters that I want. Then hold your left click on your mouse and drag this to your layout. And then it will place those there. Then I'm just going to grab each one and get them in order to the word that I'm wanting to do. I'm wanting to do the word explore. As far as getting them all so that they're lined, it's okay. You don't need to do that exactly because we're going to use these distribute buttons up here. And I need another E on the end, so I'm going to hit Control J to duplicate that E that I've selected and place it down here. So now I'm ready. I can see that my spacing isn't equal, and I can see that it's not all lined up. Now this font is a little bit easier to use because it's symmetrical, and so you don't have to worry about a letter being taller or shorter than another one. So this works perfectly when you're doing your alignment. So I'm going to select the E, and then I'm going to hold my shift and select each of the other letters that I want to use. And that one's not letting me, so I'm going to just go over here to my layers panel and select it over there. So now that I've got the entire word selected, I'm going to do my even space, which is the equal gaps in the Photopea program. And then I'm going to do the center alignment so that it centers it along the center. So now my spacing is even in between each of these letters, as well as it's aligned from the top to the bottom along the center. So since I've got those all the sizing and the spacing that I like, I'm going to hit Control E, and that makes everything into one layer. Looks like I need to move it up a little bit more, so I'm going to use my Control and my right bracket and click on that till it gets to where I want it. And once that's on your layer that you want, I'm going to hold my shift key down, grab the corner, and size it the way that I'd like it to be. And I'm good with that, like that. And now I just want to add my shadows to that also. So I've got my shadows on my title there. So next we're going to talk about adding text, doing your journaling on your layout. I'm not a huge journaler, but I know a lot of people like to remember what went on. Me specifically, I feel like the picture tells the big story, so I always will date my layouts so that when I'm organizing, I know when we did that, what year it was, and when the date was. So I'm going to come down here to my tag, and that's where I'm going to add my date. So I'm going to click on the T right here, which is for your text. And you can change your color of your text if you would like to with this box, and you can change, whatever color you're wanting to work with. I'm going to go with a little bit darker blue. Once you've got your color selected, you can click on OK. And then right here is your fonts. You just click on that drop down, and the Photopea program has quite a few fonts that you can pick from. You can also go here and load any font that's on your computer if you have a specific one that you're wanting to use that you have installed on your computer. For this, I'm just going to click on this one font right here, and I'm going to change my size just so it's bigger so that we can see it for demonstration purposes. And I'm going to click on there. We'll zoom in a little bit right here. You can see this little cursor here. So I'm going to type the date, September 2021. And then once you've got that typed in, you can click on the check mark, and then you can go to your move tool and then move that down to where you want to put it. Now, a lot of times I'll put my date underneath the picture, size it down. Sometimes you can put it right here on your mat. I have to move my layer up, but I'm going to put it on this tag. So I'm going to pull it over here, and then I'm going to rotate it. And then I'm going to size it down to where it fits on the tag. And once you're good with that, you click on the check mark. And there you've got your date on there. And then if you were wanting to do some journaling, you would click on your text again. If you need to change the color, again, you'll change that there. You can do your justification to the right, to the left, and to the center here. So first off, I'm going to just make sure that my text tool is selected, and then I'm going to draw a text box. So just the area that you're wanting to do that, you can draw a text box so that it automatically will return once it gets to the edge, or you can also just type. So I'm just going to type just a little bit of wording. Okay, so if I want to make that so that it fills in a little bit more space, you can drag in from the sides or from the bottom, either way, to make your text box. Size that down. You can also, once you're okay with the size and you hit OK, hit your checkbox here, then you can select that text box and resize if needed. Make sure you hold your shift key down so that everything stays in proportion. One thing with your texting, as far as sizing goes, if you're printing, you don't want your size. Let me go back in here to text. So your size here, and some fonts are smaller and some fonts are larger, but just your basic font, you don't want to go any smaller than a 12 in your size, so that if you were to print it, you'd still be able to read it. Even if you size your layout, your print to an 8x8, as long as your font isn't any smaller than a 12, you should still be able to read that. But just make sure you check on that as far as if you're like I say, some fonts run smaller and some run larger. So it looks like the size of this font is let's see, I don't think it's a 68, but maybe it is. Yeah, the font on here, it looks like the font in Photopea the sizing may be a little bit differently. So just be aware that when you're sizing that you don't want to go too small. You want to be able to look at it. If you look up here at your inch marks, if the inches look like a normal inch, so if I zoom in a little bit more, so that's a little bit larger than a real inch would be, you still can read that. You just don't want to go too much smaller. So that's one thing just to be aware of when you're doing fonts, that you allow for printing and being able to read those fonts. Click on the check mark. So there we have it. We have a layout that has text that was done with a text box. You have your alphabet that either comes in your kit or you make out of the fonts that are on your computer and just make large letters if you don't want to use the font in your computer. One thing to be aware of also is that you don't put shadows on your journaling. You're great if you're doing a large title, or even if it's made out of paper. These are made out of like a flare. You do want to add a shadow to those because they are a separate element. But as far as your text in journaling, or like this text on this tag, it would be done with a pen, handwritten, or you would do it with a typewriter if you had, or printed it off on a computer and put it on there. So the ink would be embedded into your paper. So that's why you don't put a shadow on anything that would have been typed or printed or written on with a pencil or a pen. And that's the last part of this tutorial.